Hello. It is actually a very dark and dreary day here in northern Arizona, but that makes a great setting for my video topic today, which is the 10 haunted hotspots of northern Arizona. Before I begin, I want to give credit to the source. I did find this cute little book in a northern Arizona bookstore, but you could find this on eBay and Amazon. It's called actually it's called Haunted Arizona, Ghosts of the Grand Canyon State, and it's by Ellen Robson. So before I begin, my channel is Living in Northern Arizona, and I do sell real estate here in Northern Arizona, Sedona, Verde Valley, and Flagstaff. So if you're interested in working with me to buy or sell a home up here, my contact information is in the description below, and that will tell you how to get in touch with me through call, text, or an email, or anything else you can think of. So I want to begin. My first haunted location is the Verde Valley State Historic Park in Camp Verde. So this is kind of a museum today. Camp Verde was an old army post built in 1879. Later they renamed this Fort Verde. It was abandoned in 1891, but originally there were 2 cavalry companies housed there, 22 buildings. There was a museum, an administrative building, and then there were headquarters or officers' quarters for the soldiers that were there at in the cavalry. Some strange things, though, have happened in this building since it's been a museum. Some of the employees report hearing heavy footsteps back and forth day and night, and they've been unable to figure out where the footsteps are coming from. There's been a ghost or apparition of a pretty young Victorian woman in period clothing, and she looks very distressed when people see her, and it's uncertain if that's the same as another apparition they see, which is a lady dressed in white on an upstairs landing. It's probably the same ghost. There have also been sightings in the second-story window of flickering candles late at night, but there's nobody up there, so unknown where that is coming from. Now, there was only one tragic death reported on the grounds. Apparently there were 2 soldiers that were horsing around with each other, playing. One of them pulled out the gun and didn't intend to do this, but it accidentally went off and killed the other soldier. So nobody knows who this ghost is, but perhaps it is the widow of the soldier that was killed, unfortunately, back when it was housed as a cavalry unit. So my second haunted hotspot is the Cottonwood Hotel in Old Town Cottonwood. Now, this is a very interesting tale. The Cottonwood Hotel currently operates as a bed and breakfast, and the ghosts that are there stay primarily on the 2nd floor, and one of the ghosts is thought to be a person called George Brooks. Now, George Brooks was an English psychic who loved to come stay in the Verde Valley because he would book lectures, workshops, that kind of a thing, because he was a psychic. And this would happen in about the 1920s. So in 1925, he predicted that there would be a terrible catastrophe in Cottonwood. And the very next day, what happened was there was a large bootlegging still-in facility that blew up and wiped out part of West Cottonwood, including the old Cottonwood Hotel. And nobody died in this explosion except for George Brooks himself. And that was also a little bit weird. Some people speculated that maybe he had been murdered because he was known for coming to town and having these psychic visions that would sometimes expose people for things that they had been doing that they didn't want the public to know. So what happened is the new Cottonwood Hotel was built on the same grounds as the old one with the same floor plan. And today guests will often hear footsteps in the corridors, objects swinging in the room, falling out of the closet in the middle of the night, pictures sometimes falling off the wall, and sometimes people walking into the room and the picture is hung upside down. So guests often say they think they hear mischievous spirits moving around. There was one time a guest had come to the front desk and say, who is staying in the room above me, because they're making all sorts of noise and I'm not able to sleep at night, and how long are they going to be staying there? The desk clerk looked at him and said, well, we've not had anybody in that suite for about 3 weeks, so I don't know what you're talking about. Of course, the guest was immediately taken aback, packed up all his things, and checked out and left after that because he was a little bit freaked out. So number 2 on my haunted hotspot of Northern Arizona is the Crown King Saloon Inn Restaurant in Crown King. So the Crown King Saloon was built in the 1880s, and it was built in this place called Arabella. And in 1906, they dismantled it, moved it about 5 miles down the road to Crown King, where it sits today. The second floor was used as a brothel, and there is an old ghost that they call Leatherbelly, and she is the ghost of one of the ladies in the night who used to work there. And there is another ghost often spotted named Hugo. Now, Hugo was a Vietnam veteran, and he is often seen in a long trench coat and this big hat and brim. Now, Leatherbelly and Hugo were known when they were alive to be frequent partiers. They loved to party, and often guests who stay upstairs report hearing partying going down in the downstairs suite. They hear glasses clanking, music, laughter, and one of the guests who stays there frequently said he hears the partying sounds, he hears the ghosts running up and down, and when he's tired and wants to relax, he says, cut it out, I'm trying to sleep. And then the noise will stop for the rest of the night until the next evening. So kind of an interesting story. That is the hotel in Crown King. So number 4 is Crystal Magic, which is a wonderful crystal shop and bookstore in Old Town Flagstaff. I love Crystal Magic. I have never seen or experienced paranormal activity, but when I'm not in the store, I'm not usually looking for that. So what's interesting about Crystal Magic is it is one of the oldest buildings in downtown Flagstaff. And supposedly there are 3 guests that are often sighted there. And what happened is Crystal Magic began in 1884, and it was built kind of as an old saloon, and it was destroyed in a fire on Valentine's Day about 1887. And so the owner liked the thing, he rebuilt it to, you know, the existing structure at the time, and in 1888 it was destroyed again in a fire. But the owner still wasn't deterred, and he rebuilt it for a 3rd time in bricks, and that structure still remains there today as Crystal Magic. And there was a neighboring business that told the current owner a story that he had heard that there was a young girl murdered in the basement of that facility, and that there were 2 or 3 other murders that had happened in the building way in the past when they used it kind of as a saloon. And in 1915 they were doing a little bit of renovation. They had removed some paneling in the upstairs balcony, and behind the paneling they saw bullet holes that were, you know, covered up that they didn't know was there. So apparently the stories of the gun-slinging gunfights may have been true because it was supported by the bullet holes covered up by paneling. So one of the employees of Crystal Magic used to report seeing a ghost with long shoulder-length wavy brown hair. Other guests had seen a young girl dressed in white. She always appeared like she was frightened and scared, and maybe these were the same ghost. Maybe it was the young girl that had been murdered back in the day. There's another ghost that's often seen, kind of a ruggedy old miner type, seen in the basement. Sometimes the female employees would go in and get a broom or a vacuum, come back up, and there he was at the top of the stairs, scaring them. And a lot of them said they felt uncomfortable because he's just leering at them. And nobody, of course, likes that. There's a 3rd ghost that has been reported, not so much as a sighting, but more of like a feeling of a presence, and it's got this masculine energy, a little more benevolent and violent as the vibes that they are getting from the other ghosts. So those are the big 3 that they see. There's other reports in the Crystal Magic. Now, like I say, I've never noticed that before, but I've never been paying attention to it. So the next time I go to Crystal Magic, which is one of my favorite shops, they do have a Crystal Magic in Sedona, but it's the one in Flagstaff that is supposedly haunted. Now, number 5 on my list is the White Mountain Lodge in Greer. Now, Greer, of course, a beautiful part of the White Mountains in the eastern Arizona area. The White Mountain Lodge was built in 1892 by Marion and Agnes Lund, and apparently between 1904 and 1940, the couple raised 8 children in the lodge. So today, guests sometimes report that they feel the presence of a female. Sometimes they've reported seeing a female apparition, wandering in the backyard, and they thought maybe this is the ghost of Agnes. Recently, a couple stayed in the lodge, though, and they checked out the next day and sent this email to the owner, and what they said was that the husband had woken up in the middle of the night. He looks up and he sees a couple sitting in the 2 chairs in the room, and he reported that, gee, that couple looked a lot like the one in the portrait that is hanging in the 2nd floor hallway. And he said he felt like the ghosts were trying to communicate something to him, but he couldn't make out what it was. So he got a little bit creeped out, and the next day the couple checked out and left the hotel. So that is an interesting story. Also, number 6 is the Hoover Dam in Nevada. So the Hoover Dam is what dams up Lake Mead. It's kind of on the Arizona-Nevada border. So construction of the Hoover Dam started in 1931, and it lasted 5 years before the dam was built. And the construction superintendent used to brag about he was going to build the largest dam in the world in the least amount of time, even if it meant working his workers until he killed them, which unfortunately kind of happened quite a few times. So they had a crew of 5,000 construction workers that worked, 3 shifts, so constantly around the clock until the dam was completed, in order to get it done on time. And legend has it that ghosts of the construction workers who lay entombed in the cement, like they had fallen in, haunt the dam today. During the construction, there were 96 fatalities in the dam. Some of those were people falling, illnesses, drownings. People had fallen in the river and drowned, heart attack, and there were many that actually had heat stroke because it just got so hot. So 96 fatalities. Ghosts are often seen. There are 2 main ghosts that are reported most of all. One is kind of a construction worker looking ghost, dressed in overalls. Now apparently that is kind of what they wore at the time. They've seen him trying to mouth words, but yet the guests and the tour guides can't really make out what he's saying. And then, because no sound is coming out of his mouth. Oh, and you can maybe hear the thunder outside because we're having a monsoon. There is a second ghost that's frequently spotted. They think this is the ghost of a guy who was doing a project later on in 1980, some kind of a repair where he was in the building and he leaned against the railway. The railway gave out and he fell 2 stories down, landed on his head, and died. So this ghost that they see, they often see him getting on the elevator, but what really freaks out the guests and the tour guides is sometimes they will hit the button on the elevator and the elevator will open up, and then there's the vision of this ghost in front of them. So that's kind of creepy. So other tales that I've heard about the Hoover Dam are ghosts swimming in the river down below, and another story is consistent that there's some kind of a night watchman ghost that is patrolling the area late at night. So that is the Hoover Dam in northern Arizona. Now, number 7 is the Haunted Hamburger in Jerome. Now, I have tried a couple of times to eat at the Haunted Hamburger because it's supposed to be a great fun place. I wasn't able to get a parking space, so I ate at that place called Grapes. I think it's Grapes down below, but I'm going to make it into the Haunted Hamburger. So what happened there is the ghost made himself you know, visible in mischievous ways in the 1990s when a new owner came in, bought a building that was previously either a hotel or apartments, and he decided to renovate it. It's a building on, an old building on Clark Street. So shortly after he started refurbishing, he would be working and misplace his hammer. And so he did it again. Oh, I misplaced a second hammer. I can't seem to find it. A third time he bought a hammer. It was 30 bucks. In the 1990s, that hammer also disappeared. So he's like, screw it, I'm going mad. And he just started using rocks to hammer in. So a couple days later, he had gone to the deli next door, and the owner of the deli said, hey, have you seen the ghost yet? And the owner was like, what are you talking about? And the deli owner said, well, the previous owner used to complain that all of his hammers and tools would disappear, and he thought it was a ghost taking his tools. And the owner was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'm not as scatterbrained as I think. And then he went back inside the building, and lo and behold, there are the 3 hammers just laying around in plain sight. There was another report of a workman that had come in who always had like a wrench strapped to his tool belt, and the wrench disappeared only later that day to be visibly sitting on a table in another room in the building. Now, the owner also said there were some days that he would just arrive early in the morning to start working, and he'd find hot water coming out of the faucets full blast. Other times, he said, doors would slam, lights would turn off, turn back on, and those kind of creepy things would happen all the time. But then they said after the restaurant actually opened, a lot of that paranormal type activity stopped happening. So not really sure what had happened, if the ghost just moved to a different building in Jerome or moved into a different room, but not as much paranormal activity in the Haunted Hamburger, but a great place to eat if you happen to be visiting in Jerome. So number 8 choice on my list is the Hotel Brunswick in Kingman. Now the Hotel Brunswick, Hotel Brunswick was a first 3-story building in Kingman built around 1909. And the hotel was vacant for about 20 years, and the new owners came in 1999, and they wanted to renovate it and have their beautiful dream hotel, only to find that they weren't alone, that there were at least 3 ghosts that were living in the hotel. So the first ghost sighting was in room 212. There was a ghost of an old man, an old gentleman that had been frequently spotted in the room. One of the guests decided to do a little bit of research. They went down to the old Kingman newspaper, did a little bit of the microfiche, and found an article that said in room 212 there was a guest in the hotel, a wealthy gentleman who was going to have a meeting in the lobby the next day. And when he failed to show up, employees went in and found him dead on the floor in room 202 and 212. Then there was another incident in room 202 where a guest had passed away. Employees reported going into the room, finding the mattress had been turned over, photos turned upside down, the footstool was in the other part of the room. Housekeeping keeps finding out that kind of stuff. And then there's a third ghost reported in that hotel, a ghost of a little girl that's sometimes seen on the 2nd and 3rd floors, just running back and forth down the hallways. But what's interesting is after that ghost is seen, guests often walk in the hallway and find pennies just laying on the floor where the ghost had been. So that is the one in Kingman. Now, number 9 is the Yampa Inn, I believe, and it's in Prescott. So the Yampa Inn is a high-end tourist hotel in Prescott built around 1927. So in 1928, a young couple arrived at the hotel, and they were going to have their wedding night there and their honeymoon. So a couple hours later, the groom said, I'm going out for a minute. I'm going to get something, a pack of cigarettes or something. He went out, and he never came back. So the bride, whose name was Faith, after about 3 days realized her husband is not coming back, and she went to the balcony, the one that faces Gurley Street, and she hung herself on the balcony. Since that has happened, there are a lot of reports of supernatural activity happening in the hotel that, of course, they blame on this broken-hearted bride named Faith. So interesting stories. Then around 2000 there was a young couple that were staying in that balcony suite, and the husband or one of them woke up at 3:30 in the morning and they heard water running out of the faucets. The TV and the radio were blasting and the lights were turning on and off in the room. And they're like, what the heck is going on? They had been planning to check out the next day, but then they went to the hotel lobby, said, weird things are happening, what do you know? And they told them the story of Faith hanging herself, and they were so intrigued after hearing the story that they booked, they extended their stay for a couple extra days just to see if they could hear it happening again. So number 10 on my list is in Williams, a place called Rod's Steakhouse. Rod's Steakhouse was located on the classic Route 66. Everyone knows, get your kicks on Route 66. It runs through Williams, and it's been operated there since about 1946. It was Rodney and Helen Graves that opened the historic landmark restaurant, and Ron sold the building in 1967. And he passed away the very next day. So the wife always said that he was married to his job, he was a workaholic, and then he sold the building and died. The new owners continued to feel his presence in the building. I think maybe his ghost was still hanging around. In 1985, a third set of owners bought the restaurant, and they were doing a little bit of renovation. And they said their first year in the building was holy hell. They said it was pretty horrific. In the area where Rod's office was, there was a huge window hanging, and that just one day busted and fell to the floor. And they said it kind of almost looked like it broke from the inside out. Like there was no way of explaining why this thing had broken. There was other unexplained activity, such as footsteps walking down the hall when it was a carpeted area. The owner would feel the presence of somebody in the room with him. This is interesting, he had lost a ring and he thought he's never going to find the ring. He toured the building inside out, couldn't find the ring, gave up, and the very next day, sitting on the top of the copy machine was the ring. And he's like, that just appeared there. I think it's Rod's ghost that helped me find the ring. And he gave the ghost credit of finding the ring on the copier. Now, I'm not sure if that restaurant is still open. I may have seen it when I've been working in Williams. It supposedly has this huge aluminum steel, maybe not aluminum, fiberglass steer on the top of the building because it's like a steakhouse. I may have driven past it. It's probably in operation. So if I go to Williams again, which I do a couple times a year to sell property, I'm definitely going to see if I can find it, and I'm going to stop and have lunch here. So that's it. My name's Dawn Dickenson. My channel is Living in Northern Arizona. I work for Realty One Mountain Desert, selling real estate in Sedona, Flagstaff, Verde Valley. If you have any interest in working with me to buy or sell a home up here, I love hearing from my YouTube viewers because they make my very best clients. So in the information box below, the description is my contact information. Feel free to email me, text me, give me a phone call, and I will get back to you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, please hit the like button, maybe subscribe if you like this type of information. I post topics on living in Northern Arizona every single week, so I hope to see you back here again on my channel this time next week.